There's one admission that millions of men across America are ashamed or unwilling to admit. And it starts and ends with these three words: I need help. When it comes to mental health and men reporting what they need, there's still more work to do in continuing this conversation and offering an olive branch of assistance. Because you see, according to our friends over at Statista, only 12% of men seek professional help for their mental health journey in 2021. Furthermore, according to the Anxiety Disorders Association of America, mental health stigmas deeply affect men in 2023. The association reports that 1 in 10 men experience both depression and anxiety. However, less than half will receive treatment to address these concerns. And sadly, 4 times as many men as women will die by suicide as a result of their mental health struggles every year. Which begs the question, how can we continue, or in some cases, start a meaningful conversation to revert this troubling trend? My friend Marc Paisant may have some interesting answers for all of us to consider. He's a certified personal trainer who has had his own struggles with mental health, and now he's on a journey to make sure that the conversation of progress surrounding men's mental health continues. He hosts the Relatively Normal podcast, where he shares his journey with his struggle with weight, his battle with anxiety and depression, and to tell people, specifically men, that they're not alone during their mental health journey. He's on a mission to make sure that men have an ally in their mental health journey and to continue the conversation towards progress in this issue. And one of the ways he says we do that is by having continuous conversations about how men are feeling and how they can better express and manage their emotions. And he says it's okay for men specifically to be vulnerable as a coping mechanism to deal with all of the pressures that come along with being the head of a household or the most dependent figure in your family's life. And he joined me this week to share more about his intimate journey with mental health and how he's hoping to build a community of support to help others manage, thrive, and conquer their mental health concerns to be the best version of themselves. And he joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. My friend, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn all about your fitness journey this morning. Great to see you, and happy Wednesday to you, my friend.
Happy Wednesday. I am ready whenever you are.
Absolutely. Now, Marc, I know that you're a mental health advocate, and you host 2 podcasts, my friend, so I'm wondering if we can begin our conversation by you telling me what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
What? Well, that's a great question. I appreciate you wording it like that. I like to think of myself as just a man trying to figure it out on the run, on the go. A guy trying to build the plane while he flies it, and I like putting my story out there, and I like talking about my journey because I want to let others know that they can do the same thing. And I started the Relatively Normal podcast as a way to allow men a safe space to talk about their feelings and emotions and battle that stigma that's associated with talking about mental health and talking about those days that you just don't feel up to it, but you put that smile on your face and you put that strong front out and you mask everything. And I want people to be able to understand that that's not necessary. Like, you can tell the world when you don't feel 100%. You can tell others that you need a break, that you need help, and you can be vulnerable. And that's what I want to do. And I figure if I'm the one saying it, then others can take from my example and learn to do, or not learn, be brave enough and have the courage to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, let's dive into why it's so important for men specifically to talk about mental health. Because, when we look at mental health, mental health issues go severely underreported. So tell me why it's important for men to be vulnerable and open when it comes to discussing their mental health.
Well, there's so many reasons. The big ones, of course, are the fact that this society has, and when I say this society, it's just the world we live in, has really never had that space for men not to be the protector, not to be the problem solver, not to be the one in charge. And I'm not saying people, men shouldn't do that. I'm not at all telling people not to live their lives they want to. However, what we've seen in the past couple decades, past generations, is that the number of men that have committed suicide is 4 to 6 times higher than women. And it goes unreported because we don't think that, I don't say men deserve the space, but that men have these feelings. And because a lot of the times we mask it because we don't want to get labeled as weak. We don't want to get labeled as, other terms that are synonymous with weak. But the fact of the matter is that if you're human, you have a brain and you have feelings, and you should be able to talk about them. And should is a word I don't like to use, but when it comes to, the feelings and emotions that men have, it's a space that, women have been very open and accepting with each other about. Women allow other women to be vulnerable. Women allow other women to talk about their emotions, to come home from work and be sad, to come home from a day with the kids and be, anxious or feel, run down. And men have to continually, or at least men feel they have to continue to be that strong, supportive, powerful male figure. And the fact of the matter is that you don't. Like, we need to make sure that we're talking to other men, that we're listening, that we're being good friends, and that we're allowing the men in our life that we call friend, that we call brother, that we call dad, cousin, son, whatever, that we allow them the space to open up and let these emotions out so we can begin to heal and end this stigma.
Yeah, and Mark, tell me, when we look at the term internal versus external motivation, I'm wondering how you think they're interconnected, and how do you define both those terms in your view?
That's one of the things that we try to teach kids when they're young, when they're either, in school, when they're playing a sport, when they're trying to become better at something. Like, so many times we tell our children, hey, if you do this, like, I'll do this for you. And I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of saying, hey, if you put in this work, if you read this book, if you train for this amount of time, we'll go get ice cream. And that's an external motivation. It's hard to teach because I like to move past motivation, and I like to use the word discipline, because as an adult, if everything we do is because of external motivation, then we're continually looking for it. Our jobs, our careers, external motivation is a great thing. Like, we want to do the job to make money, to be able to live our life and take care of our family. Very rarely do we see someone who will, constantly go to their job and just be internally motivated to do it, almost like they do it for free. Like, that doesn't happen. We live in a capitalist society. Like, I I don't do that all the time. However, when you get to a point where you want to better yourself, when you are at a point where you say, I want to be the best version of myself, what do I need to do that? Do I need to put 30 minutes a day out to go for a walk? Do I need to put an hour a week out to read this book? We don't always want to do the things that better ourselves. As a father, as a family man, I want to make sure that my family is taken care of, and I'm always doing things for them. However, when I flip that and I say, I'm doing things for myself, I have to dig in deeper, dig in internally and say, okay, I might not feel like it. I might not get rewarded externally, but I need to be a better version of myself. And I had to look deeper. And that comes with discipline, like waking up early in the morning 4 or 5 times a week. I don't get a reward for that. I don't get an external reward, but I do it because I'm disciplined and I want to be the best version of myself.
Yeah, and Mark, I know that you're an advocate for therapy and counseling when it comes to mental health, because it was a real ally for you during your own mental health journey. So tell me why you think more men, specifically, should embrace therapy, counseling, and a little bit about your own journey as well.
So I had a friend tell me once, and I will keep this forever, is that, she was going through postpartum. She said the therapist was someone who assisted her in carrying that weight. And if we can break it down to the most, basic, practical, pragmatic example is, so many men listening to this. I know women do too, but I'm talking to the men. So many of you are carrying all this weight of trying to take care of so many things and be so many people and be the best at everything. And it's when you start to write down and think about all the things that you're trying to be great at, in that pressure, it just mounts on top of you, and it just feels heavier and heavier and heavier. And then you think about, who am I talking to about this? Like, who am I allowing into my life to carry some of this weight? And when you find the right therapist, that therapist will carry a lot of that weight for you. And in my case, it was just someone who could consistently validate my thoughts and tell me that what I was thinking was valid. Like, the feelings I have were valid. A lot of times men say, I shouldn't feel like this. I should be happy. I should be grateful. I should be thankful. And it's like, no, you are allowed to feel exactly how you feel. Now, do we have to work on coping mechanisms? And that's a big thing, is like, therapists will, one of the big things they do is they help you, notice your triggers and find your triggers and understand when, why, where they're going to happen. And then they help you to figure out those coping mechanisms, whether that be journaling, whether that be leaving the situation, going for a walk, whether that be meditation, whether that be mindful thinking, all that stuff. But the biggest thing is they allow you to validate your own feelings and say, oh yeah, I'm allowed to feel sad at this moment. So that's one of the biggest reasons that I advocate for it, because that's exactly what I got out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I'm a huge believer in that strength can act. You can achieve strength through vulnerability, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think enough men use that as sort of an ally to their own performance in life. So tell me, why do you think vulnerability can be a strength for men as well?
I love this question so much. I love this question so much because you are absolutely correct. Um, I the easiest thing, and we don't see it as easy, but one of the easiest things is to mask emotions and kind of go into your corner and figure that with time everything will get better. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. One of the most satisfying, one of the most absolutely engaging and great conversations that you'll ever have is a vulnerable conversation between two men, because it takes so much strength to tell another man that you feel like you're failing, that you feel like you're not strong enough, that you feel like giving up. Because how many times do we see kind of men doing the whole peacock? They put their feathers out and they flare them out and they say, this is how strong I am, this is how great I am, this is what I did, my child did this, I was this person, I got this promotion, I got this raise, I did. Like, that's what we expect. But when one man sits down with another or calls another man and says, I tell you what, I don't think I'm prepared for this interview. I think, I yelled at my kids and I don't think I was being a great dad. I'll be honest with you, like, the bills are piling up. I don't know if I'm built for this. And then just to hear that exchange, like, it gives me chills just thinking about it, because like I live for those moments where other men can call me and tell me where and when they feel weak and why they feel weak and what this moment is doing to them. And I just want to listen. How many times, like, the world is not always conducive to listening to men's issues, because we just sweep it under the rug and think, all right, he's got it. Like, he'll get through it. Like, you got this. How many times you've heard, man up, like, be a man. And it's like, I don't have to do that. Like, I can be vulnerable. It takes so much strength to go against the current and say those things. So I want more men to be able to do that.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a minute. What do you think we can use as an olive branch to get more men to be open about their mental health?
The biggest thing I say is people need to understand how men communicate, and it's these little innuendos that men do. It's very, very rare. I'll do this, but it's very rare for a man to just walk into a room and say, "Hey, I feel down, I feel weak." Like, it doesn't happen that way all the time, or even a lot of the time. But what'll happen, a man will come home from work and, wife, roommate, whoever lives with him, he'll just sit down on the couch and say, "Man, what a day." That's it. That's it. That's all they'll say. That is a cue for the person in that room, if they're friends with this man, if they love this man, to pause the TV, because we all can pause TVs now. Thank goodness DVR. We can all pause TVs, put the phone down, put the drink down, stop everything you're doing, and say, "Oh, really? Like, tell me about your day. I really want to know." The words "how are you doing" are powerful if it's followed by "no, really, how are you doing? I want to know." And at that moment, the whole room can change. But we don't see that enough. We see the, "oh man, what a day. then the response usually is, "Oh, tell me about it, man. Are we still going to watch the game, or we still do? Remember, you got to do this." It's like there's no pause after those little clues where a man is trying to open up the conversation.
Yeah, and Mark, I want to talk to you this morning about resilience and perseverance. And before I ask you the question, I'll share just a little bit about myself. So, Mark, at the age of 9, buddy, I was told by a doctor that I would not be able to walk for the duration of my life without assistance because of the severity of the cerebral palsy I was born with. And, I tell people when I'm interviewed or when I'm interviewing people that the changing point of my life happened when I was 9 years old, and when my middle school principal told me that the only limitations on my life are the artificial ones that I place personally. So tell me about perseverance and how you view the concept of that and overcoming adversity. What are your thoughts there?
I used to have this complex that I should just consistently be grateful just because I was fortunate in my life. Like I was fortunate to grow up in a nice house, nice neighborhood, both parents. And every time I would get down, every time I would think badly of myself, I would literally just be like, "Oh, well, you should feel grateful. You should, I don't know why you're so." I would tell myself this. I'm not telling anybody else this. I'm telling myself. So you can understand how my self-talk was very negative at certain points. But the beginning to resilience and persistence is finally allowing yourself to just be in the moment. Because a lot of people think persistence is just fighting through anything you have. Just fight through it. Just fight. Go next day, next day, next day. Every day get better. And I'll tell people, and they don't. No one has to listen to me, but I'll tell you, my turning point was the fact that I started to understand that getting better every day is difficult, is very hard, is almost impossible. Some days I have to go backwards. Some days I stay the same. It is hard to do something or get better every day. And that's what makes persistence sometimes very hard, because people think of it as this thing is that every day I got to be a better person, a bigger person, a stronger person. And it's like, no, every day is just a new experience. Every day is just more learning. Every day is just more maturing. And once I figured out that I could persist on a level that allowed me grace, allowed me the flexibility to just be some days instead of, going above and beyond and being a better version of myself every day. That's what kind of was a turning point for me. Persistence is one of those things that we kind of misuse because we think that people just have to fight through every battle. You have to fight through every battle, get through it, get through it, get through it. It's like, man, that doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound rewarding. That sounds very difficult. And that sounds like it's going to be beating me up constantly. So I think people can learn to love themselves, learn to allow themselves grace, learn that every day doesn't need to be that battle. Or some day is going to be that battle, of course. But as long as you're moving forward and learning from your experiences, that's what persistence looks like to me.
Yeah, and Mark, tell me, I'm fascinated to ask you, why do you think it's okay for men to cry, to get their emotions out? Why do you think crying can actually be a source of strength when we're trying to express emotion?
Mm-hmm. There is these extreme parts of all the emotions we have. Like, for instance, if you're a 18-year-old college basketball player and you win the NCAA tournament, you're not you're not just, overjoyed or happy or excited. You are over the moon. Like, you're extremely satisfied. I mean, that is the moment you want to live in. That is a great moment. And we accept that. We go there, we go from 0 to 100, and we allow it. We allow that moment of, nervousness and fatigue at the beginning of the championship game to that moment of just exultation and just, absolute pandemonium in regards to our feelings at the end. And that's healthy. Like, we allow that to be healthy. On the flip side of that, if we lose a loved one, if we lose that championship game, if we think that the world is totally against us, we're allowed to go to that extreme emotion of and cry. And ugly cry too, if you want to, like ugly cry, eyes swollen, eyes red, and it lets all that emotion out. Because what happens if we keep all those like, we would never allow someone to win a championship and like bottle it all up and just be very stoic and hey, why aren't you happy, Mark? I'm just bottling all this emotions up. No, like that, we know that's not healthy. That's obviously not healthy. So the flip side of that is when I don't feel the greatest is when I need to let this out. It's not healthy to bottle those emotions either. Let it out. It's a physical release of an extreme emotion. That's what crying is. And if we allow boys and young adults and teenage men to do this, then we're showing them that their feelings are valid and we allow them to work through things. If we consistently tell young boys, young teenagers, young adult males, stop crying, stop, what are you crying for? If we always, question them why they feel like crying, then they're going to grow into men who think that it's not acceptable to cry. They're going to keep emotions in. They're going to be emotionally unavailable. They're going to be the ones that are in relationships and their wife or partners constantly saying, like, why don't you show emotion? So we have to continually teach that is a perfectly normal way to live. You are human, and this is helping this person grow as an adult.
Yeah, so let's follow up with asking you about how do we define men being emotionally available?
This is one of those things that starts at a very young age because we're talking about generational societal norms. And we're talking about the role of men in relationships. We're talking about the role that men play in child rearing. And we talk about the role that men play in an emotional contract, which a relationship is. Now, if generation after generation after generation, men are told to be stoic, we're told to not show emotion, we're told to be protectors, we're told to keep everything straight, everything in line, don't get out of line, don't show emotion, then we're not going to be emotionally available unless we learn it at an older age. Now, if we get to a point where fathers are consistently telling their boys that they're allowed to be emotional, they're not the ones at the end of the basketball game that the 8-year-old loses that is crying, that, man up, we don't cry in this household, we don't cry, stop crying. If they continually hear that, that is going to, children remember. Things get seared into the mind of children. Remember, they're learning constantly. So as they get older, regardless if this is a, relationship at home, a marriage, relationship with friends, at work, whatever, they're going to constantly have that seared into their brain where they are not going to allow their emotions to come out. Now, I'm not telling every man out here to be the most emotional person in the room and just go start crying in business meetings. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is more of a relationship you have with yourself, because you can allow yourself to get emotional and cry and work through your feelings, because that's what the emotions do. So it all comes with how we're raising our children, what we're allowing them to do, and what words we're using with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I'm a huge believer in building what I call social capital. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to start this podcast, to have conversations with people, to build social capital and better understanding on issues that affect all of us, and provides different opinions about how to get through these issues. So I'm curious, how do you think we can use building social capital as a competitive advantage when we talk about men's mental health?
Well, it's one of those things where I tell people all the time is that we're constantly living in a place where people always talk about society and social norms, and the thing about social norms is hilarious, because I always tell people, like, who creates social norms? It's like us, like we are society. Like, I mean, it's always funny to me when we do that. But men have to, in regard to social capital, a lot of it is about the relationships we build, and using social connections, to achieve common goals, things like that. I always tell people it's funny when you look at the differences in relationships with women to women and men to men. Women will have kind of a web. Most women will. I don't want to generalize at all, but women they usually have this social web, and men don't really look at it that way. If they're social, they don't really see it as that. They have like one or two friends that they'll hang out with. They have a group of guys, but other than that, they won't have much of a social life. However, it is quality over quantity. So the capital that we use, the friendships that we make, I think if we have more conversations with the men that we love, the men we call brothers, cousins, friends, best friend, whatever, the men that we love, we start to build that social capital, which in turn turns those other men into better listeners, better friends, and you start to see that web getting bigger and bigger. And like, you have a group of men who are vulnerable and communicate well. They branch out to another group of men who are vulnerable, and you see where this is going. Like, the web keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, and it could start with one person. Kevin, it could start with you. It could start with me. It always starts with one person. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Or two guys talking on the podcast. You start with two guys talking on a podcast. That's what.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I know that you're also a certified personal trainer, my friend. So, for me, as I shared with you, I have a disability. So, making fitness is a priority in my life, is a non-negotiable for me. It's something that I do every day, because if I don't use my muscles, they contract faster and I lose them. So tell me, why do you think it's important for men to make their physical fitness a priority?
I believe, this is one of those things that it's for men and women. And, the fact of the matter is that people are living to be older. Like, people are living, like, it's not rare for someone to live to be 100, like, or 90 or 100 anymore. So, as we get older, especially women, when I talk about this, especially women are, they're more prone to osteoporosis and bone issues. And you always have issues with muscle atrophy. And the thing people need to understand, which took me a while to understand, is that muscles and the proteins and amino acids in them are the building blocks of so many things in your life. So we're talking about people are living longer and they have to be proactive with their health. And it takes resistance, it takes cardio, it takes strength training to build those muscles, to create, bigger, the amino acids and the proteins in the system. And it helps you live longer, maintain flexibility, maintain joint pain. I mean, we all get some kind of nagging issues as we get older, whether it be our back, knees, whatever. But as long as you're staying active, you can be proactive in working against that. And also a big part of this is people you can't just focus on what you're doing to your body. It's also what you're putting in your body. And you have to make eating the right things and getting the minerals that you eat, carbohydrates, macros, and micros, and we don't have to get too specific, but it's all unique to your body. So it's always good to put your own body weight and height into an online calculator and see if you're getting enough protein, carbohydrates, all that good stuff to maintain that bone density, to maintain the muscle strength, to maintain the brain function, because your brain needs carbohydrates. You need proper sleep because that's when the brain is cleaned and the brain regenerates. So there's so many things to this, but as long as you are making sure you're eating correctly, most of the time, we're all allowed to have that cookie or fried chicken wing or brownie occasionally. And getting consistent, good sleep, and then getting a good fitness resistance routine 3 times a week, you should be golden.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about consistency, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Consistency is based on discipline. Again, we go back to that word. It's like consistency only appears when discipline is in the picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, tell me about your time as a college athlete, my friend, and how that helped sort of shape the person you are today and your mental health journey. How did that time affect your life, my friend?
So thank you for bringing that up. I was a college athlete. I played soccer at Clemson, and I learned a lot about myself in those years playing that. I learned that I did not love sports as much as my teammates, and I was more of a big picture thinker. Like, don't get me wrong, I love soccer, and I still love soccer to this day. But I loved being a student athlete. I love the atmosphere of college. I loved maturing and learning more about the world. As I've gotten older, I've still kept that. I've gained more of like a learner's attitude, an education attitude, where I want to learn more and more each day about the things that's happening in the world. And sometimes I wish I kind of had that in high school, but you can't go back. But it was a great experience. I still have so many friends from that time, but I did quit my senior year because I lost the love for the game, and I was brave enough to not drag myself through a year of soccer and absolutely hate my life and hate, doing that couple hours a day, every day. And looking back, that was one of the changing points in my life where I understood that I'm in charge. Like, this is my life. I can make decisions for myself. Will they have repercussions? Of course. But I did love that time. I did, learn. I learned how to push myself, how to test my limits, and that was a turning point for a lot of stuff in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, I know that you're on a mission and you have a goal to inspire people to ask for help when they need it from a mental health perspective. So, from a broader perspective, what do you think is the key to ending the stigmas around mental health and having a wholesome conversation that really moves the needle of progress forward?
It is a long uphill battle, but it can be done. Like, we're not talking about something that's going to be done in a day, something's going to be done in a year, but um, we have to make sure, again, it goes back to listening and being good listeners and being good partners and good friends and good communicators, because we still have terms, and I've mentioned man up, be a man, that don't really add anything to the conversation. Like, that doesn't really add anything. And I'm not here to talk to you about what is the word man is defined as, or masculine, or any of those things. What I'm saying is that when we say things that are so pointed and invalidating, as when someone is emotional and someone is vulnerable, and our response is be a man, or back in my day we didn't have time to feel, or any of those things that are just so demeaning and so demoralizing, where this person doesn't want to even open up and talk to you anymore. We need to change that response. And that's not a should, that's not a one day, but we need to do it now, where we start to figure out, and we're self-aware enough to know, like, oh, this person is opening up to me. Now, do we need to have some very difficult conversations with people and ask them to do more, and ask them not to consistently feel sorry for themselves or be in, think like a victim? Of course. But it was explained to me one time, and it was a whole paradigm shift for me, that someone with this victim mentality, or someone who consistently just wants to play the victim or be a pity, like, that has worked for them. That is a defense mechanism. That's worked for them for a long time. So we need to get to the deeper issue and actually have those conversations and say, why do you feel you have to do this? I'm here to listen to you. I don't want you to always feel bad for yourself or always think you're the victim. But let's talk about this, and let's see why you always feel this way. Again, ending a stigma isn't like snapping your fingers. We have to just be better listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, throughout the course of my life, my friend, I've had a total of 7 surgeries, and I was born 3 months premature, my friend. But I have to tell you that I love living life, because I choose in life not to dwell on my personal or physical restrictions, but rather to celebrate my life and celebrate the lessons that I've been put on earth to teach, my friend. So I'm curious for you, what's the best part about living life, and why is it important to put yourself first before anybody else?
I'll answer those questions in the opposite of how you answered them. So I'm going to answer the second question first, because um, I want to make sure people understand why putting yourself first is so important. And it's one of those things where it's seen selfish. It's seen as very vain to always put yourself first, make time for yourself first. But here's the thing, like, a bunch of us have so many responsibilities. If you just lay out your responsibilities, like, okay, I have to, be a good dad, I have to be a good husband, I have to be a good wife, I have to be a good cousin, a brother, I got to take care of my father, I have to take care of my mother, I have to be at work, I have to, so many. When you start listing them out, you're like, man, I a lot. And then you start thinking about those things you love doing, your hobbies. Like, I have to record a show, I have to coach kids, I have to, go, all those things. And when you break it down and you think about the one, constant in all, the one common denominator, it's you. It's literally you. And so if you can't be the best version of yourself, how are you going to be able to give anyone else the best version? How are you going to be able to be the best coach, the best father, the best teacher? All those things. And that takes me to your first question about, that's why I love living life is because I'm able to give. I'm able to be the best version of myself for others. I'm able to inspire. I'm able to to be a dad and a pretty good dad at that. I'm able to be a good coach, and I wouldn't be able to do any of that stuff if I hadn't accepted that I can take care of myself. I can be a better version of myself. I can be the best version of myself. Because so many of us live this thought process of I have to continually give of myself, which is fine. Like that, I'm not telling people don't think like that. I wish more people thought like that. More people were were agapic and gave of themselves. But you have to be able to balance that life because you cannot pour out of an empty cup. It's a terrible cliche, but I will continue to say it because you cannot pour out of an empty cup. You have to refill it. You have to make sure that you're balancing what you're giving and what you're putting in it.
Yeah, self-reflection and self-care is so important, isn't it?
It definitely is, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark, in the few minutes I have left with you, my friend, I'm curious to ask you about the importance of really living in the moment and being a great listener. What does that mean to you?
So there was one point in my life, and it was a couple years. Someone asked me, and the icebreakers, and it could be whatever. Someone asked me, "Hey, if you could go back in life, like what's one thing you changed about yourself?" Or everybody gets that question. It's the icebreaker question, and we say it. It's we understand that we can't do that, but we've all answered that question in different ways. Oh, I'd go back and go to this school, or I'd go back and I'd learn this, or I'd go back and I'd do this, whatever it is. But I finally got to a point where I was like, I wouldn't go back and change anything because through all of those experiences, I'm where I am right now. And I like where I am. I love where I am right now. Yeah, of course, could a lot of us have more money? Yeah, of course we could. Could a lot of us have more time? Yeah, of course. But I really, really like the person I've become and the situation I'm in. And that all came from my past experiences. So I'm not worried about the past. I'm not worried about it. Nothing I can do about it. And then when it comes to the future, I don't know. I'm not a future teller. I'm not a sorcerer. I'm not a wizard. I can't. I don't have a magic ball in front. I have no idea, and I wouldn't want to know. I wouldn't want to know. This journey is great, not knowing what comes tomorrow. So the less amount of time we spend on thinking about the past and the future allows us to put that energy into the present.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Mark, my final question for you has to do with your final message to any men watching this or listening to this today about the idea of allyship or asking for help when they need it and the idea of acceptance of all people because we all need an ally in our mental health journey, don't we?
We do, and that's a great place to end because I'm pulling up a text message that I got from a friend, and I'm just going to read it because it says, "Hey man, wanted to share before I forgot. It meant a lot that you reached out today. Thank you for holding me accountable and coaching and mentoring me. Appreciate you deeply." And that was after I had 5 minutes. I had 5 minutes on my way to a coaching session, and I said, let me call my buddy up and just see how he's doing and follow up with him some things he had talked to me about. 5 minutes, a 5 minute conversation. I got in the car, called him, he picked up, talked for 5 minutes. I said, got to go. And that's what he texted me afterwards. And we have this idea that these things take so much time, so much effort. So we can't do it. Minute phone call, a 5-minute phone call. That's all it takes for another man to be grateful and to say thank you for holding me accountable and coaching me. So that's what I want to leave everybody with.
Yeah, absolutely. And follow Mark if people want to get connected with the good work that you do, my friend. What's the best way they can do that?
So if you want to keep up with any of the shows that I host, you can follow me on Instagram at hosted by Mark. So hosted_by_Mark, MARC. Paisant_fitness on IG, Marc Paisant on LinkedIn, and then dropping very soon will be my website. It's getting revamped and updated, and that'll be marcpaisant.com, and that will be available December 1st. And that's where you can go to find all my coaching and book any appointments and just find more about, find about what I'm doing.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, I want to thank you for all the good work that you do to move the needle of progress forward when it comes to men's mental health and really providing a stable and reliable source of leadership and accountability for men. My friend, your work in the space and time on my behalf this morning is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here.
I thank you very much, Kevin. This has been great. I appreciate you and what you're doing, and I hope you are able to reach so many people with your story. So thank you for being who you are.